Good morning.
Good morning.
Whoop. Hope you're well this morning. Good to see you. So just to start with, I'd like to, Thomas and I will kind of give an overview on where we've been and where we're going, so that we're all here, here in the same consciousness space and awareness space. So part of what the central insight into what we're doing is that working online is fundamentally different from working on site, in the sense that the ways that we create connection have to go deeper. That the big difference between working online and working on site is that the ways that we have learned how to make eye contact, how to be with other people emotionally, how to use touch, use our bodies, use our expressiveness in order to make emotional contact with another human being needs to go to a deeper level of subtlety in order to come alive.
To maybe say it in a slightly overstated form, we have to relearn how to make contact. We have to relearn how to make contact in the new space that we are not used to, and particular a space that we are not used to for having contact. Because the computer, the internet, is not the place where we are used to meet each other in a direct way. So one way we would suggest to also see this place is really to forget about that this is computer to some degree, and allow yourself that this is a meeting of other people. Because different to a virtual space where you are in a virtual reality, may it be a virtual reality of YouTube, a virtual reality of the internet itself, here we are meeting real other peoples in real space. So in that sense, Zoom meetings are very different than other computer spaces, because they are not about the computer, they are not about the internet, they are about us. And we have to relearn and forget about the computer sphere, forget to some degree about it, so that we can rediscover each other in a new space.
Mm. And that rediscovery means going more deeply into our humanness and the place that we're connected. And the place that we're connected before, in some ways, before our differences, is in presence. And that by bringing our awareness of our own presence alive in this space, and to meet each other in presence, in a collective shared presence, a deeper connection and aliveness begins to emerge. And it's that aliveness that we are speaking about in terms of creating online aliveness. It's a subtle awareness, so that it takes something to bring one's attention to it, and yet it is, as some people have called it, home. It is the deepest, or a deep part of who we are as human beings. And so the subtle awareness is something that we are not aware of physically so much, although it has an effect on the body. It has, one does perceive it through one's senses, but at the same time, it's more held in consciousness, in our awareness field, our bodily awareness field, our mental awareness field. It's held in human awareness. And as we've said many times, this space is held only in consciousness. because we don't have a physical place where we are. So this allows us to go to this deeper place and meet, which is a beautiful thing. And it takes effort and sensitivity and training our sensing capacity to sense presence and to be present with each other.
As we said the other days, the disadvantage can turn into advantage because we have to learn the subtle capacities to be in contact here in a new way. And this forces us to some degree to be more aware of what it needs anyway to be in contact, even in on-site meetings. Mm-hmm. Because we don't have anything here but our language, our appearance, and our consciousness. This is what we have to work with to work the space that we are together in. But because we are so much dependent on these more subtle realities, we are also more aware, or need to be more aware, what it needs to come together in consciousness itself.
Mm. So on our first day, we were focusing on one's experience and capacity to be present. Yesterday we were working with trying to begin to work with the field of presence, our awareness of the collectivity of presence and what contributes to creating coherence within it. Because the coherence is the connection, and it allows the deeper work. And from that coherence, then co-creation can begin at a different level. And so we're moving. We went from very quickly. This is very fast. We're going from individual presence to collective presence and working that collective presence. And now we're going to continue that work. We're going to continue that work today and tomorrow, because that's our constant reference point. But as we talk about the more practical aspects of how to set this up, how we design for presence, we want you to be practicing it. This is not information that you just take in and make notes about and go, okay, in my next thing, I'll just do that. This is something that calls for stretching these new muscles of being in presence with each other.
And as you, I'm sure, have recognized, we again and again have emphasized the we-space quality of this. And one reason why we do this is because in an online meeting like this, it takes a lot of awareness to come together in the wholeness of our meeting and to not fragment. Because part of the difference to an on-site meeting is that in an on-site meeting, a space already brings us together. Here we are, all in our private spaces, and maybe our office, maybe our home. We open our computer, but we haven't left our private spaces behind. So it's very easy to get stuck in one's private space and not really enter our shared space. So it needs a lot of shared consciousness to co-create this shared space. To be aware that we are together creates the togetherness. And when you facilitate with other people, whatever you do, one of the big achievements that can be reached is the experience of that we are in something together here, in spite of being in one's private room. That people to some degree forget that they are in the private room, that they are more aware that we are here together than that you are aware that you are in your home, in your kitchen, in your office, or wherever you are. So there's a transition in consciousness that we all have to make. And we as facilitators have to help each other to make this inner transition, because otherwise we are all kind of spectators of a space over there, but I'm still over here. And that's exactly what we want to overcome. That it's not an I'm here and you're over there. No, we are together in this. But in order to achieve this, we have to be create a heightened awareness of this of this we space.
And I think we had a number of examples yesterday, or a few examples of how sensitive this space is. When you're working at this level of presence, it is a very subtle and very sensitive space. So if you're all working, if you do create this space, caring for it, tending to it is very important, because it is easily dropped or interrupted. It doesn't, and it calls for us to share an intention for why we're meeting. It calls us to bringing all of the skills that you already have as counselors, facilitators, workshop leaders, consultants, in keeping people together in a project, in a space. It takes all of those skills within this at a heightened level to work this in the way that can really produce something dramatically different.
And one way to talk about this is also to talk about the respect for each other. Because when you go somewhere in a place, you show respect by the way you dress, by the way you are, by the way you show up. And to use an example that happened yesterday on one of the screens, and it's a gross example, but it shows also, because even in more subtle ways we can do this. If someone walks in a bathroom through his bathroom on screen, it's just not respectful for each other. I understand the temptation, because you're just with your computer at home and maybe whatever, but just to be aware, no, you're not on your own, just with your computer. You are with 80 other people, and you wouldn't walk with 80 other people through your bathroom. You would not do that. And I'm using this as a rather strong example, but it also comes down to very simple things, the way we show up, just to be aware, no, I'm not on my own anymore. I'm not on my own. I'm with you, and I want to respect that I'm with you. So I don't go with my nose here, because I don't do that with other people.
In public.
And just simple things that we are very used to in normal life.
Or in our private space.
No, I mean the other way around. We are very used when we come to a public meeting to not do this, and to be aware that this, although I'm at home, although I'm in my office, although I'm in my private space, maybe I'm in public, and I want to respect that I'm with you. And this is something that we as facilitators first want to learn, but we also want to help people to learn this, because any violation is a violation of the whole space. And of course, you want to do this in a polite way. You don't want to offend people in this, but also to encourage them to learn this new public space that we are together starting to find out how it works.
Great. And we human beings are so context dependent. And we don't even notice it. I mean, that's part of what we keep saying, is that when you go into an office space, you know the way you're supposed to behave in an office. And when someone violates the ways that we know how to be in office space together, it's offensive. It's strange. So here this is what Thomas has been pointing to. Here we are in our private spaces or our home office, and yet we are actually in public. And to get ourselves to recognize that this is the case, and that you are inviting 80 people into your own space, where are you inviting them? That's why lighting and the space that you're in is like just the first basic thing as a facilitator to be able to create a in a certain sense, formal. And I don't mean that in terms of stiff or rigid, but but a respectful context in which you are inviting people in. So we would like to invite you to join us in opening this space. So we've been talking for a while now, but we would like to invite you to deepen the space through your invitation to it.
So we would ask you to find your own ways with your own skills. I'm sure your skill background is rich and diverse. To invite us as we are here to this space in this Zoom meeting, and just use your own skills, your own experience for an invitation for all of us to join this space that we are together in. So we would like whoever wants to start to find your own words, your own ways for an invitation to this space that we share today here on screen.
So just unmute yourself and invite us.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I want to say welcome to a very special place. I've never had any visitors in this place, as it is my godmother's house, and it's a place of very fond memories. And I'm very thankful to share this space now with so many people who are so open and so present in such a positive way. And I'm very thankful to you that you addressed this, what you just addressed, all of that. So I'll keep this here in my space. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva.
I'd like to invite you to my space. This is my meditation corner, and I've lit a candle, which is here as a start for our spirit, to light up our spirit. And it's my favorite corner also because this is where I meditate, and you'll see the Tara, the Buddha, and the Pope. But it's all faced in one dimension in spirit. And also, when you first said that, Elizabeth and Tom, I instinctively reached for my cup of tea, which I live in Britain. So in tea, it's a welcome to everybody with a cup of tea, which is as much also being Chinese descent, that tea is also an invitation for everybody that will enjoy our tea and time together.
Thank you.
Nice, Ken. Would someone like to call the space forward, to call us to our awareness of the collectivity between us?
I would like to share.
Okay.
Am I audible? Yeah. I'm from India, and welcome to my space.
You're very quiet.
Am I audible now? Is it
better?
A little better, not much, but go ahead. We
will all listen very closely.
Listen very closely.
Right. I invite you to my space. It's the library I work in. When you were sharing, I work with people in rural India, and when you were sharing about presenting yourself and the space, like calling people into your house, it was very valuable insight for me. But at the same time, I want to bring in context of class and caste, So I'm wondering, I'm wondering how background can really, mm, be a way also of us, for us to acknowledge the different places we come from. Like if I'm talking to a student in rural India, she might not have a quiet room. She might not, have present herself, which is very appealing. Or no, I get what the context you were talking in bathrobe and public space, but yeah, that just brings to my question about uh, me questioning myself, um, about okay, how do I let my student from maybe very simple background not feel less, uh, and when I'm is virtual background a solution, because it is a very it is politics, who we call into our space and whose space we are seeing and how comfortable they are. uh, I'm that student might not be comfortable showing me her poverty. So yeah, I mean, I welcome more dialogue on that also, if possible.
Okay.
No, thank you very much for bringing that in, and I think it's a very valuable addition to what you bring in, and somebody also mentioned this in the chat before, just to acknowledge the diversity of, that we are meeting, diversity of backgrounds, and also the class differences that you're bringing in. I think one common way how to think about it is again very simple. It's respect. Uh, uh, to be aware what effect we have on each other and find a way to be respectful. So when you are sharing a Zoom space with people in rural India, you don't want to show offensive difference. And I very much appreciate that. And I think it's up to our sensitivity. What is the right way to show this respect? And I think we have to find our own ways to do this. But just to acknowledge the sentiment, to be respectful and be aware of the other and the otherness, and how we can accommodate the differences. Because also we have to be honest. We don't want to pretend. And it's a difficult question, but just to bring this question in, I think is a very valuable contribution. So thank you very much for this. I also would like to add one dimension to this invitation, because I appreciate very much the invitations that all of you gave. I also would invite you to not only invite into your own space, but in our shared space. Mm-hmm. And to be aware that part of the art of doing this is to create the shared space between us. Mm-hmm. And I very much acknowledge that my space, as we also started today, is part of the shared space. But at the same time, what I want to point to, or what we find the most helpful to point to, is that we are in a shared space, in a shared online space of togetherness that is not my office, not my home. It is part of this, but it's this subtle space that we are creating through language, through video connection, through consciousness. And to point out this space strengthens also the coherence in this shared space.
So I'd like to have a moment to invite us all to sense quite directly the contact between your body and the place that you're in. So you might notice the sensations of contact where your body is supported, and having a sense of your body as a whole. So you can actually feel your locatedness And then allowing that awareness to include this here-ness that we share. So you might notice already how the faces and the names are becoming familiar. And that this space is no longer a space of complete uncertainty, although there's still uncertainty to it, but that actually we're growing a fabric of connection. That each sharing, each face on the screen is a part of the coherence that we share. And what might come forward if we really stay connected to ourselves and connected with each other.
And I can add on to you. I would like to invite us all that we are sitting in this space together. We're sitting around a digital fire in a circle. So we are in this room together through a screen. And by that, I would like to invite us all and remind us all that all of us is welcome. And that means all of us. Like all our subconscious parts, all our conscious parts, all our thoughts, perspectives, polarities, diversity, and unity, our feelings. So all of us is welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. I would like to add to that. Imagine each of us is an open bowl with a light in it. This is a candle which I haven't kept lit for safety reasons. But each of us is an open bowl with a candle which shines a particular light, a light that's unique to each of us. And today, I welcome us all to tip that bowl into this common bubble that we share and to pour our light into this bubble. And we don't know how those lights will mix, what colors will emerge, what energies will surface. And it will be a surprise. And it will be something we can't predict. So let's surprise ourselves.
Thank you. You can see how the space shifts with the different contributions that have come in. How we're actually with the different invitations that we've heard now, that there's been a play between diversity and integration, a recognition of our uniqueness here, our presence here, each in our spaces, and the common space that we share. And it's important to hold both and to work with both.
There's a simple saying in Tai Chi that is very appropriate to what we're doing here. And I appreciate very much the way you did it. It's just where the attention goes, the energy goes. And to see the way we direct attention is language. And when we talk about, for example, a digital fire between us, a digital campfire, something shows up in our shared consciousness that creates also an energy between us, particularly because the image of a fire is an energetic image. And just the imagination of a fire between us corresponds with an experience that we're having together. There's some energetic experience that we're having together in a digital space. So we can use language to direct our attention, to direct our energies to this space that we are creating. And of course, we have to find our appropriate language, because in a business meeting, you probably won't talk about a digital campfire. In a therapeutic meeting, you will use a certain language. In the spiritual meeting, you will use a certain language. So you have to find the adequate language to create attention and energy for this shared space. But what you all did so beautifully, you used language to create this, and to be very aware that the act of creation is exactly what allows this space to emerge between us, because it does not exist in any other place than in our consciousness. So to use language, and use the right language, and to use your own expertise allows us to create this space between us.
And it's not simply words, because we're not just saying things. We are invoking, we are evoking, we are in contact with that presence, that fire, that light, that space between, in speaking about this. Because you can't call someone into it, into your space, into this space, without being in touch with it yourself.
And again, just to bring it in, this speaks to the fragility of this space. Because when you're sitting in a room, a lot of things can go in the room, but the room doesn't fall apart. You're still sitting at the same table, in the same circle, held by the same walls, with the same ceiling, the same floor. A lot of things go on, but the space there, the physical space, does not fall apart. But in an online meeting like this space that we are holding, that is not held by the ceiling, by the walls, by the floor, very easily can fall apart, and we can go in all different directions. So it needs a lot of skill and a lot of subtlety to allow us to stay together in this space.
That's why we keep emphasizing this one thing over and over again, because it's this training of this subtle muscle, the capacity to be with this presence and to be engaged with the collective presence that we are, that makes this all possible.
Because as you also see, nobody can create this. This is an interdependent space. We can invite each other to participate in this space, and this space only emerges when we hold it together. So it emerges by invitation and by our shared intention to do this. So when we work with other people, we are also dependent on the other people to hold it together. That is part of the fragility, and that's part of the art of doing this, because it's all dependent on our awareness and our goodwill to do this together.
And one way that we do that is by structuring the work that we're doing in a way that allows for a lot of different ways of interacting, so that we keep people engaged, that because probably in many circumstances you're going to be in the position where you are the facilitator and the others are not engaged in this in the same way. So in that context, one's facilitation, one's invitation to one's own space, to share a space together, is to amplify that. You're going to need to give people ways of connecting with you, maybe one-on-one if you're in a therapy or counseling session. That's not hard, because we saw that the first day. If you really know that there's a living human being there with you and you give them your presence, there's a connection that happens. If you're working with a group, the group may not be holding this with you. And so in that, creating ways for people to engage in different contexts with these amazing breakout group things, that can be, that's very helpful in developing people's sensitivity to being together. And
can I add something to?
Sure.
Pamela brought me to this point. She said in her words that everything is included, and yes, and nothing is excluded. And yesterday I made the experience when I saw the person went with all of us to the toilet. It made me struggling in my mind a lot and thinking about, and I was very focused on that in a way, and lost a little bit the focus on the whole space. And in our group of four, one person named that, and because she named it, I got in resonance and could lose my thoughts about it, and went into in the we space through naming that, because the taboo was broken in a way, and that opened in my feeling the we space of the four of us. And again, when you named it today, yes, it happened for me. I could locked in a way some little bit more. And so what I want to say is that when I really accept that nothing is excluded and nothing what happens in the shared space is negative or positive, everything is like it is, then yes, then even this unrespectful thing can be an invitation to the we space. And this was very interesting for me, and very healing in a way, so that nothing is really excluded, cannot be excluded.
Now, as you said, everything can be also healed again, but also to see that a violation is a violation.
Of course.
And to also see how vulnerable this space is because of its subtle consciousness nature. The way I think you described it, it does something to consciousness. And it made it difficult for you to be in the we space. And then by naming it and making it something outspoken, something changed in that. So to be aware how everything is included and how our respect is needed in order to create this together. Because it's only the respect for the space that it really allows this space to be a stable space that does not fragment. And just to be aware that part of the art of doing this is to invite people to see this, to honor this, and to learn how to work this together. There's a threshold that we have to go through together, because it is something that you cannot see with your physical eyes. You have to see this space with your consciousness. And then, when we collectively aware of it, we can start to honor it and respect it. But that allows these shared meetings to be of a different quality.
Yeah, and it doesn't. In many ways, it's the respect that you're speaking about, Thomas. It leads to different ways of bringing things in. You know, how do you bring something in that feels out of kilter with the coherence of the group? Can one do that in a way that is respectful of the space that we share, rather than destructive of it? And that has to do with shared intention. That has to do with shared intention, purpose, and a recognition of as the preciousness and fragility of the space that we're in together.
I would like to add something to this. It was like what I was most experiencing yesterday most of the time was that what was given into the we space, and I would receive it, and there would be moments where I felt fragmentation, and I noticed all of a sudden it almost went all by itself. I noticed I need to tend to this fragmentation within myself first, and bring it within myself into coherence. And by doing this, I felt like I was, through me, more coherence was nurtured into the we space. And I don't know if I can bring it across, but I felt this was such a powerful experience of in the quiet, in the presence, even if I don't use words, this is something I can always do, even if I'm in a public space.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it feels really like being able to make a contribution. Yeah.
Great.
I'd like to say
Great.
something. Sorry, am I going over time? I just want to say.
Yeah,
it's good. It's good. We just wanted to call on you because you had your hands up.
Oh yes. Thank you. I think that penny just really dropped for me because I've done a lot of group work, and I know how important it is when you start group therapy to create a shared context. That's why we always have a checking in and a checking out in group context, in face-to-face settings. But I know how important that is, because people come from different contexts and you create a shared context. And I think penny dropped just now. It's doing exactly that thing in a medium that you are comfortable with, but it's more fragile because people can so much easier just fall back into their individual spaces. because last night I had a group on a Zoom call with it's called an Ubuntu group, which is in an African it's sort of with shared interest in African culture. And what they did was they initiated the group with reading a poem, a drumming poem, and the word drum, drum, drum. And because in African culture, they often call a group together through drumming.
Mm.
And this wasn't, so this was a poem, this was not actual drumming. And during that entire meeting, I felt a coherence that I haven't actually experienced online in a group before.
Mm.
And now what you are saying is, I think they so effectively pulled that shared and really drew on a very because Ubuntu in African culture is a very spiritual energy, and they really managed to invoke the spirit of Ubuntu in the group, and I felt it, and and now I get it. So thank you. It's and like you said, it's a visceral, it's an experiential thing, and obviously how you invoke it and how you invite would differ in terms of what the shared intention of the group is as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great.
And you're doing it right now in this group.
Yes.
Good. Good. Well, we'll take a couple of questions then. Luke? You wanna? Yeah.
Yeah, I've just unmuted myself. It's not so much a question, it's a reflection of how we bring us all together. And one of my observations is that we all have exactly the same amount of territory on the screen. And that makes us equal. But my problem with a big group like this is there are like 3 or 4 screens, and there are all these other people who I kind of feel like I'm leaving out of the group. So yeah, I guess it's turning into a question. How do I include the people that are off screen, and even the people that can't get their photographs up? I had a really nice connection with Nitya in one of the small groups, and he can't get his photograph up. And yet he's there somewhere out of sight. I need to hold him, and yet there's this kind of dichotomy between my picture being close to you as the hosts always, and yet these other people kind of like, and I can move between the screens, but then I feel I'm fragmenting away from where the central stuff is happening, which is kind of on the main screen. So there's this necessity to fragment because I want to include the other people, and yet is it fragmenting, or how do I dance between holding everybody and being here and not feeling like I need to be very square and on screen and direct and having this voice to be present, which isn't me at all. I'm just normal, and you know, I do my Tai Chi and I do my sculpture, and I don't want to have a special voice. I just want to be normal and inclusive. That's my question really in this context.
Just shortly, Luke, first we really do invite all of you to also go to the other screens and just look around, and not to stay just on one screen, and just to be aware of each other. That's something that is just helpful to be aware of us. We do the same thing here. And the others, of course, there are kind of disadvantages when somebody has no camera. We have to work this, which brings us in the end to the point. In the end, it's a question of consciousness. To be aware of each other in a wholeness is something that can be supported by the screen, but in the end, it's also a question of myself. As we heard before, if I am focusing on coherence, I can be an advocate of coherence. Because if I succeed in that, I can be a resonance field of this coherent consciousness, because that's what I'm talking to, and maybe I'm talking from to the amount that we succeed doing this, we help to support a coherence of the whole. So in the end, it's an inner question. There are other things that can help, but in the end, it's an inner question to really allow the wholeness to be the focus of a conversation, be the focus of an online meeting like this.
And wholeness has diversity in it. It's not, wholeness isn't a bland bowl of oatmeal. You know, wholeness is all of it. And as Pamela was saying earlier, I also wanted you to know, Luke, on our screen, you weren't next to us. Each person's pattern is different. So that's one thing to realize, which is fascinating. But everyone's pattern of people that they see is a different pattern. The people who speak will show up in your
wherever you are, the people will show up on your screen, the people who speak.
So it's not even that what you see and we see is the same thing. But a whole can be created nonetheless. The people who are on screens that we don't see are having similar questions and similar experiences that the ones on the screen that we do see are. And it's part of the mystery and kind of the nature of this, because as Thomas was saying, it all exists, that the meeting point is consciousness rather than anything physical. And it takes something to kind of realize the significance of that and what it means. And because part of that is that an invitation that one gives to the group to be together collectively affects the people who are not in your own range of vision, but are in the same consciousness field that we're all in here together. Thank you. So we'll take Karen and Hannah, and then we want to go to make sure we do some small group work so that everyone can get a chance to exercise their muscles here. Karen?
Thank you. I just wanted to add one thing to what Luke and you were discussing, and that is, this thing of, do you watch the camera or do you look at the screen? And your answer to that was hold the consciousness of everything. So it doesn't actually matter where your eyes are, you're still holding the group. So to me, if you can see them on the screen or they've got no video, you still can hold them with consciousness, which includes them. And that probably goes beyond any boundaries, physical boundaries. I just thought I'd throw that in the mix. I wanted to ask a question before we started this great conversation. You were talking about how you structure your work for different ways of interacting and meeting rooms. And I don't know if you're going to cover this later, but for me, there's a protocol, because when you go into a meeting room, you're away from the facilitators. And I know as a participant, it makes me nervous. I feel a bit shy because now we've got to hold the space together. We've got to create it. We don't have much time to do that. We've got to get somewhere fast and then come out of it. And then when we come back into the room, there's this thing in me about confidentiality. Now, what I said in there, does it stay in the room? Does it come back? I'm very careful not to mention people's names because I want to give them the space. But I had an experience there, and then how do I bring it back? And there's some, not shadows, but there's some subtleties about meeting spaces when we meet on our own and then the group again that need to be bridged or worked with. And you may be addressing that later, but I didn't want to miss it because it affects the experience.
What's that, love? What was? Okay, I hadn't muted myself.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think that it depends it depends to some extent on context, or actually a lot on context, and it depends on what it is that one is discussing, I think, we're focusing on process here, not the content that people are bringing. But you're right. I mean, we're learning how to create protocols in this that allow for maximum connectivity, maximum engagement, and for those of us who are very sensitive to privacy, who are particularly working in consulting or counseling contexts, how you move from group to group becomes exceedingly important. I don't know if that helps, but you can. We're not looking for confidences to be shared here in the main room, but more, what was the process that you experienced? And then that is something that each of us holds. Like, I appreciate Luke's bringing in a problem from yesterday, with naming someone. I appreciated that.
Yeah, I suppose it's about naming it. Like, you're going to go into the space now, bring your experience back, or this is purely confidential, or maybe laying those.
Yeah.
It's like naming the obvious again to create, a wee space, right, for them or us as a whole. So I just answered my own question. Okay, thank you.
Hannah, still.
Anna, hi.
Hi. I wanted to go back right to the beginning when Rosalie was welcoming us, when she talked about the body and she brought us into the body, and pick up the thread through something Hardo said and various other people, also Luke and Karen. The other really unifying thing, intentionally, is tone and sound. What we do with sound, and the choice of language and tone of the voice, because I think it's very something I became very, very aware of yesterday is the I don't know how to articulate this, I'm struggling a bit, but when you're in the we space, there's another process going on in the me. And the transactional, there's a regulation, there's a choice that you make in how you transact what you say in the we about what's going on in the me, and how you bring that through. And the tone, the language is one thing, the choice of words, but the sound and the tone and the level and the way you do or don't express emotion, how far you name emotion rather than actually sharing it, is really, that was a lot of what my learning was about yesterday. It was really instructive. And I'm sorry I'm rambling, but maybe you can pick this up and do something more constructive with it. But I think there's stuff around that that's really important.
No, I think that's really important, Hannah, what you're picking up. We were speaking yesterday about how do you use language to create coherence in a group, and therefore your tone, your rhythm, the tempo, the rate at which you speak, all have an impact on that space. And and depending on the context that you're in, if you're in a rapid fire brainstorming session, that's a different use of language and so forth than when you're working with let's say a grieving family. It'd be a different way of being. We're speaking much slower than maybe not much slower, but we're speaking more slowly. We're modulating our voices in order to stay present to the presence that we experience. But in many ways, the language and the tempo of the language, even the words that you choose and so forth, depend on your own capacity to stay connected to the shared presence. And what coming out of that, how does that coming out of you move into language? And if one is in touch with that, it starts to create, as you could hear from Rosalie, creates a coherence in the group. But, and actually, I'd like to move us into groups now. I know, Pam, you have your hand up, but if we could hear from you after, maybe in the next part, that would be great. Because this is exactly what we want to look into, what you brought up, Hannah. We want you to, we're going to be in groups of 5 to 6, and this is your practice session. This is your practicing this together. And again, we say respect, recognize that you are not just caring for the space, but caring for each other, for each other's capacity to have time to be able to explore this. But we want you to, with your voice and being together, create a shared space. Evoke the shared space together. And you'll have 15 minutes. 15 minutes, yeah. So we're trying to grow the groups a little bit each day, so that you develop more capacity to hold more. But okay.
So see you again, 15 minutes.
Oh.
Seems you are all back. We would love to hear from your groups, and we also, you can raise your hand, but you also can just speak up. So we would like to do both today. So if you just want to come in, please do so. But we also want to still use the raising the hand. So if you feel uncomfortable to just always jump into the conversation and feel more comfortable with raising the hand, we also want to give you the opportunity, and we will call on people who raise their hand too. But if somebody wants to start and share about
creating this shared space with each other, using your language to create the shared space. What did you learn? What did you discover? How did it work?
Hello.
Hi, Pam.
Can you hear me? Hi. So what I wanted to share before the break, which actually was what we explored together in the breakout group, was speaking to something that Luke asked about. And I was sharing with the breakout group what it is that I do each time I log on to the Zoom call with both of you and everyone here. And that is, I leave my video off and I take my time to go through each page of Zoom. And I will look down at each person's name, and inside my heart, or even out loud sometimes, I'll just say, thank you, Elizabeth and Thumbs. Thank you, Liz Crichton. So I'll read out everyone's names in my heart or out loud. And I do it with intention of the sensing we spoke about earlier, of bridging the gap, which actually really isn't there, and expanding my own sensing and embrace of everyone into my heart, my center of my chest, And by the end of the last screen, I just feel and I trust that the sensing of the all is held inside of me and with each other. So it was something that I shared with the group that I thought I wanted to share in the space that we shared together.
Mm. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Hi. From the breakout rooms we've just been in, what I really appreciated was that people came from their own personal experience, but they really embodied it. And that brought us into the we.
Uh-huh.
And the sharing of their way or the sharing of a story, but also the non-sharing. We felt very comfortable to be silent and really give space for each other in that, but not without any need to have to come in or to have to sit back or not be heard. And that felt very rich.
Yeah. Did you feel that a shared space between the five of you opened up?
Yeah.
And how did it happen? What helped that to happen?
I think, first of all, appreciation of someone in the group who's spoken in the big group and what she brought. And then the sharing of a story of meeting people and how that person met them, even though they've not met them before, in the context of meeting us and none of us having met before. And also a sense of the vulnerability of meeting, but being with it, not pushing it aside, but really being present with it. So holding the whole, as you say, to allow the diversity, the cohesion of your words, for letting everything all be there without it having to be different or forcing it in another way.
And as you say that calls that to all of us, actually, which is lovely. I also appreciated the distinction that you made about the story, because it was a story, you were saying it was a story that enabled, and that about meeting people, that enabled a meeting to happen, so that it was not just a story that is about something about me or some individual experience, because that's in creating connectivity in this space. If you're really trying to work together, one of the things that can happen is if someone is in their own story and just telling their story, and that's a very self-focused in that, and lose contact with the collective space. But story is also a brilliant way to be able to bring in, to invite people in, if the story is open in that way.
Yeah.
So thank you. And maybe to Martin, you raised your hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to share one thing, and this is really, so the task was using language to create the space. And what happens to me was I come into that breakout group, and it was like within milliseconds, so the we space was there. And then Peter Paul made an excellent point for me. I noted down, and he said, okay, it's with our being, we're creating that space. And this is, for me, it's really, it's a miracle. I come to this room every morning here, and it is like I join the room, and then I take a deep breath, and I'm slowing down. So, and it is, I'd like to make that point, because especially in your way of being, it could be misleading that we say it's about techniques, it's about structure. Yes, we need all of these things, that's true, and camera has to work, but if there is one key key thing, yeah, which and this would be the way we are and the way we bring in, and this is what people would automatically feel. So do we want to help? Do we want to open things? And this for me is the most important, and this is what I experience in that group, and I really love it. And thanks Peter, Paul, and thanks Elizabeth and Thomas. Yeah? And this is for me, this is the mission. Okay, I have to transport and bring to other groups. Yeah. So and that's it. And techniques, yes, I'm working with IT people, yeah, and I need a lot of structure and need a lot of technique and these kind of things. Yes, yeah, and yeah, we have to do it. But it's the big danger is that we lose the really the key point. Yeah, yeah.
No, Martin.
Thanks to all of you. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for pointing this out, because in fact it is an important point for us. These techniques are helpful, but they are not the main point. And even more so, as you were expressing it, they can come in the way. Because if I kind of try to technique my way through this, what I'm really transmitting is a technical consciousness. Yeah. The resonance that we are talking about is not something that I can create through technique, really. Technique can help. I'm not denying that. But it's the way, as you expressed it, the way we are here, that something builds up. What you call being, and I think it's exactly the right word. Our being here is a transmission of something. It's always a transmission of something. So the best way to facilitate a V-space is to be oneself in the V-space and relate to the V-space. Then we as soon as we do this together, the V-space creates its own magnetism. And it seems that's exactly what you're experiencing in your group. So thank you so much for pointing that out.
Great.
Martin, I loved you, at the end of when you were just speaking, your smile sort of broke through, and it was just, it brought this presence about you that that really I really connected to. I had such a different experience today than I did yesterday in my small group. I was on the other call yesterday. I'm in North America, so it's very early for me now. So in the small group I was in yesterday, someone arrived just full and singing and shining, and there were two other people that were very cautious and needed more time and space to be able to enter the space fully. And so as he entered in and just asked pretty quickly, you know, how is your heart? He was met with questions and, well, how are you here so quickly? And I need a little bit more space and time. And so that created a dissonance in our being together. And I was very aware as we all entered into this space, into my small group here, that we were all entering with breathing and just some spaciousness around the entering. And it was quite lovely. Someone also opened our space with poetry, which was with a Rumi poem that was, no, it wasn't Rumi. It was it doesn't matter.
Rilke.
Yeah, it was Rilke. Thank you, Hilda. And it was so lovely. It just allowed us to all gather in this space around these words that sort of collected our spirits. It was really lovely.
Thank you, Diane. And I think to connect that with what Martin was saying, it's like silence, breathing together, poetry, all can work to create this is to invite people into this space together. And the most important thing is you're being present. You're allowing your presence to be. Thank you. Andres.
Yes, well, I have just two remarks. One is that I was once I got into the space, there was one person, second, third, fourth, and I could feel and as I saw that I was the only man in the group, I started to feel very vulnerable, and that surprised me. But it reminded me also of I think the first group that I was in, I had the same sort of feeling, and I don't know, and so I was waiting for somebody to speak. I needed to hear someone. I needed for people to become alive instead of just looking at the images. I felt very uncomfortable just breathing. and then when someone spoke, as people started speaking, I needed a story to then start getting into the space. And I was very thankful that there were a couple of people who were excited and smiling and describing where they were, which then just calmed me. The idea of being able to share their natural space, the weather, the seasons, and just connected. And what I guess what I'm trying to say is that personally, I needed to feel connection, and I needed that to come from somebody else. I couldn't lead it. And I was just wondering, are there times when you that's okay? Because I was thinking to myself, if I had been asked to lead it, I don't know what I would have said. So I just wanted to share that. That's how but in the end, the time was too short. I would have loved to spend more time with the group.
I mean, just a very simple answer from my point of view. That happens to, excuse me, that happens to all of us. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And sometimes we are in situations where we don't know. And where there's how to start the space. Some people are easier with that, some people are not. But also just to be easy on oneself with this. And sometimes it takes a time, sometimes it even doesn't work out, and that's okay too. The main thing to not to put too much pressure on oneself. And if some space doesn't work out in a perfect way, that's part of it too. And in the same time, then usually we find a way to connect to each other. Sometimes there's some awkwardness, sometimes there's not. But I'm sure you, with your own background, with your own expertise, have your own way how to connect and how to create spaces. And I very much would rely on what you already have and just bring it in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's new because it's different. Being put on screen with 4 other people, down all of a sudden you're in this intimate situation. You haven't chosen it. You basically you're put into it. It's different, and I completely understand.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just share something on that?
Sure.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing, Andres. And I think not just in online spaces, even in personal spaces, I found it very useful to, like in the beginning, the invitation of bringing all of me in. Mm-hmm. And so I found it very helpful to just say that, in this moment, I suddenly feel lost. I don't know how to begin this, or I feel pressure, or I feel nervous, or I would love your support and help. And I feel I bring myself in more fully, and it really supports everybody who's there to bring bring us in more fully.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel no matter what I'm feeling, it's a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
bringing my awareness to that has been very
Mhm.
helpful.
Yeah, I mean that is becoming present. You know, there's one's presence, and then there's coming into the space with whatever you have, and if that's insecurity, if that's confusion, there's a way to enter with all of that, and to as you said, you often do that in person or on-site encounters, but it's a way of offering connection. I think from what you're saying, there's something very important and subtle, I think, in what you're saying, Sunika. There's a difference between stating something about one's experience for oneself as a defense and stating something about one's experience in order to create wholeness and connect. And there's really a night and day difference between the two, even though the words may be the same. But if you're giving that to give to the creation of coherence in the group, that then happens. If you're because this is where I am, and I'm and in some ways you could say even out of to be separate, or to assert one's separation, then something different happens. But again, it's these more subtle dimensions of our language and of what we're bringing that are rooted in who we are and how we are showing up that make the real difference.
Yes, very true. Thank you for
Sonika.
shining a light on that. Yes, that's what I really meant.
Okay, great.
I would, may I add something?
Sure.
I was thinking about what you were saying about the breakout rooms, because I know I'm personally somebody, I'm there immediately, and for those people who feel like they need more time, I was thinking about that option when you're creating breakout rooms, and I think this is the way you're doing it. You're inviting somebody to enter the breakout room. So I personally don't even feel like you're just putting me into that room like that, but you give me the option by clicking on, yes, I agree to enter that breakout room, to open that door in my own time and take a breath or do whatever I need to do before entering that room.
It's true.
It's nice, yeah.
I really appreciate it that you're taking that option, because we have that option on Zoom to just immediately throw the people into the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very respectful.
But I like the image that you're using, that basically you go through this door and you choose yourself when you open the door by clicking yes. That's a nice inner attitude, because it allows you, okay, now I'm ready, now I go in.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And also as a facilitator, to recognize that in creating breakout groups, you have an option to just throw people in automatically, which we're not doing, or to have people choose to go to enter. And as you can see, there's a difference in that from your own experience. You can imagine.
But we are a little over time.
Yeah, we for our 10:30 break, for our 10:30. It's not 10:30 everywhere.
Here in Germany, it's 10:30. But we would like to do our break now. We would like to do a 30 minutes break. So we would want to meet 10 after the hour, which is in India.
20 minutes to the hour.
20 minutes to the hour. And again, we would encourage you to leave your screen behind, go out. It's sunny here, but even if it's rainy there, enjoy the rain, enjoy the air, have a cup of tea, digitalize yourself so that you can come back rejuvenated to our online meeting. There's also one thing I want to ask you. Someone asked us in the other group yesterday, and we forgot to bring it in this morning here. In the break or afterwards, if you want to put the place where you are, the city, the country behind your name, it helps all of us to connect also to the places where we are. So we would appreciate when you can rename your name, and after your name also to put your city, your state, your country as you like, so that people also can relate to the geography of our meeting here.
And if you want to know how to rename, you click the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of your own square, your own place, and one of the options is rename.
So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice cup of tea, and see you in half an hour.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Let's take a breath and let's allow us to arrive in this space again, wherever you just came from. Seems Eva is still in her garden, which is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Good to see. Good to see the tree in your back.
It looks a bit like a virtual background, which it really isn't. It's very real.
Mm. Yeah, and actually just notice that just notice the transition from wherever you've been, your kitchen, your porch, to back to being together here. Maybe in a new environment, but still back together in our shared space here. It's these transitions that tell a lot about consciousness, about where our attention and therefore intention is.
And there's a lot to learn from these moments of transitions, because that's where it's most salient, where we move from one to the other. So the otherness of this V-space online is more rare, because we just came from a different space. So it's always also good, we do this in our trainings to really use these moments of transition to make oneself aware how I come from one space and move to another space, and how the different quality opens up as we come together here in this online meeting, because that allows us to appreciate the particularities of this space that we have here. It's different than being in one garden or in one's kitchen or having a tea, and just allow the inner senses to develop a taste of this to work with.
And it's an opening out, a slight opening out that holds so much potential, actually.
One thing that we also would like to explore together today is the question of rhythm. And we thought after the break is maybe also a good time to talk about rhythm, because it's when you design online spaces, it's also important to be aware that this works differently than on-site spaces in times where there's a healthy time to spend together. When you create an online conference, you should not create an online conference where you spend 8 hours a day on screen. It's just not a nice experience. It's just not a nice experience. And to find a rhythm where you make breaks, where you go offline, where you come back, where you find a natural rhythm that allows us to appreciate the time together, where it's not kind of, oh, I'm zoomed out, but wow, here we are together. It's joyful. Allows us to work in the Zoom space again in a very different way.
Mm. And rhythm needs time. And rhythm also, there's also a rhythm of inviting people in, and there's a kind of orchestra to orchestra. Not I'm thinking, what am I thinking? A symphony. That's right, not the orchestra, but the symphony. that there's a prelude. There's an opening. That this space works well with ritual. And whether if you're in a context that is not where ritual is people are allergic to ritual, a ritual can even be something as simple as a literal minute of silence, or actually just seeing Dita's cup, or a ritual of bringing together our cups of tea, as Kin invited us to in earlier in the session. That to create an opening prelude to your meeting that allows for some level of connectivity, and these things can become ritualized in a very touching way, and also to close in a way that allows for a recognition of what we've been in together, and a closure. So there's a rhythm to the whole experience that one wants to create.
One way we talk about this, what Elizabeth is just pointing to, we call it musical intelligence. Like when you play music together, there is a rhythm to the music, and the music starts in a way, and then it builds up, and then there's an ending. And to be aware that music is breathing, and any kind of dialogue, but here even more so, lifts from this rhythm, breathing, honoring the different time qualities. So right now, there's a time quality after a break, there's a new start. It's a different time quality than at the end of a session. And to honor that certain things that are appropriate in the time quality that is a beginning time quality. So certain things appropriate that are appropriate in the middle, where there is a height of something. And there are certain things that are appropriate when you come to an ending, when you come to a closure. And this is something you can work with in a very conscious way to support the shared rhythm and breath of the meeting that we are in, of the timing that we are in, and allow people to be with you in this rhythm, in this breathing in and breathing out, in this dramaturgy of a session, beginning, height, maybe development, maybe some dramaturgy in the middle, and the end coming to a closure. To do this in a conscious way supports very much what we're doing together here in these online meetings.
And as people who develop programs or work with people, you already know this. You probably do this instinctively. It's just being much more conscious of the impact on this very sensitive we space in an online context. That that there's a lot of, to put it in, that there's a lot of opportunity for connection, and when it's not taken care of, it can be a lot of opportunity, unfortunately, for disconnection. And that's what we're trying to build, is keep building the connection, to give people enough space and enough breathing room to be able to actually make the effort to be present. Because we've all had the experience of being in online sessions where half the people are really doing something else while being there. And You can do that physically by answering your emails while you're Zooming, or mentally by just being lost in thought. And to realize and to help the people that you work with understand that their presence here is needed, and it makes a difference whether they're here or not, and all here, all in or not. And I guess there's one other thing that being mindful of the rhythm and tempo of a session, of the times where you're allowing a diversity of responses versus an integration of those responses or activities, enables you to maximize the connectivity of this space. The more thoughtful you can be about the impact of what you're doing on the participants in your activities and events, and sessions, the more you can create the kinds of spaces that allow more connection. If you make it too intense, and this is often a mistake that people make in translating from what they usually do to online, trying to pack it in the same amount of time, you actually decrease the connectivity because people have to check out, because this space is held by our awareness. So that means everyone being present, people are giving energy and attention to the space in the middle, in our being together, and that is not exhausting, like when you're just in one Zoom thing after another, but it needs to be protected. Our capacity to build our muscles for this kind of subtle connectivity is really important, so that we don't overwear the people that we're working with. We don't wear them out. So maximum connectivity comes from creating breathing space, being aware of the rhythm and tempo, being aware of creating diversity and then integrating, and having a different ways for people to connect.
So if you have one question or want to contribute to that, Dieter, you just raised your hand. Why don't you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. It's about the structure and the flow, but maybe not so much anymore about how we structure the session, which I think you've explained very clearly and beautiful ideas as well, but about the structure and the flow and the containment within one part. Say when we are sharing, like now, if I'm speaking too much, if I go on a lot, I pull that coherence of the group, and we start having a one more than a we space.
Mm-hmm.
And in a life situation, there's a lot of perhaps energy, or perhaps body sounds, subtle sounds, that as a facilitator we can do to kind of draw the person into a closing. Mm-hmm. I feel, unless we have kind of a time limit and a bell during a Zoom workshop, I find it very difficult to call that person who goes on and on to a finish. And I'm wondering if anybody has any suggestions, because that's, for me, it's really part of the flow and the structure, and how to then go on to sharing the space instead of just dominating it.
The main way we do this is to start pointing out before that how important it is to hold this space together, because to have a shared intention of, as we again and again say, this higher fragility of this space, which means also a higher responsibility on everybody's side, to not kind of focus on just one and forget about the group, allows to hold this space together. It is always easier to heighten the awareness already before, so that people are just more alert and more aware of their own responsibility. But still, what you describe happens. And I think it's again, there are different styles how to do this. And what we do is kind of, there are two sides to it. On one hand, to protect the group, which means at some point you also have to intervene, but also to try to be polite at the same time, because if you intervene too strong, you also create a ripple in the stream of conversation. So one way how we describe this is we try to aikido the situation, which means to find a way where you don't go against someone who is not aware of it, but you invite him or invite her to maybe go in a different direction of the way he or she is talking, to go with the energy, and going with the energy to change the energy so that it comes together in the whole again. But this is also our particular style, how to do this. And it's also an art to learn how to do this. And again, as there are so many people with so many skills on this call, our suggestion is to really use what you already have on facilitating skills and find ways to translate it to this specific room here.
As to the specific question about a bell, and there are places that, a lot of places, Art of Hosting recommends doing, the talking stick or whatever. That certainly takes care of that.
Yeah.
But it also raises another one, and that you probably have noticed that too. That then you end up really creating individuals. Individual participation, and you don't allow flow to happen that can be is part of what is the potential of the space, that united in presence, and when there is some shared agreement, intention, awareness that we're doing this together, and we need to be responsible for ourselves and with each other, that there is a way that our interactions can actually really catalyze something truly co-creative. And by truly co-creative, I mean coming out of the whole, not just through the interaction of two people or three people's great idea, and then, okay, we'll do them in sequence, but actually something that is some higher integration of what everyone has to contribute. So that kind of sequential thing, and so it depends on your context. It depends on what it is that you need to have happen. It takes care of the too much talkers, and it gives space for the people who don't talk. But it also cuts down on the co-creativity of the space.
Yeah, I do a lot of counsel. So counsel is as in sharing circle. So that part is, yeah, as you say, taking care of there. But it's more for the co-creative discussions that sometimes it's just, yeah. And yeah, I agree. Just naming the things beforehand is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I hope we are not annoying to again and again and again point out the space as a whole. Just to be aware that there's a third factor in this conversation. Because to the degree that there is a shared awareness of this third factor, which is the shared space, we start to appreciate and to care for this third factor. So that's the reason why we again and again point out. The reason is very simple: to keep it in our shared attention. Because when it is, the likelihood that people respect it is just much higher. Because if they forget about it, it's just very difficult to respect it.
Yeah, great. Mahima from India. Hi.
So what I wanted to ask is, like, it's a little away from what we're talking, but it's very contextual.
is that while designing, if I design something in which there has to be a pause. So if I am the facilitator and then people go into a pause, suppose I ask the question and I'm asking them to write about it, or if like you did it, like, you know, you told people to go in breakout groups and then come back. So at times what I am unable to understand is what is the depth that they have gone, because that really matters to my flow further. So if I have asked the question and they are not, you know, I don't know if like, if it's also online space, so I'm not able to see everyone while they're writing, or you know how they are. So it's very difficult to know how far they have been able to understand it, or how far they have been able to reach the intention which I was, you know, supposing or I was expecting. So what do you do in that case? Like, how do you understand that?
So after you've had them go in breakout groups, you don't know where they are. Is that what you?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Open up a discussion afterwards. You'll find out from them when you speak with them what it is that where they've gotten with it.
So the very reason why we after our breakout groups have a form of a dialogue, what happened, is also to get a shared sense for all of us, not just for us, where we are together in this. So to have part of the discussion or the dialogue after that is a recalibrating of the space, where we see where we went in the particular breakout groups and how we can connect from here. And this is, of course, again, a sensitive thing to do, but it allows you to get a sense of where the participants are.
Yeah, and if
but at time there is very less space and like very less time, so we are unable to accommodate many participants.
Yeah.
In the sharing.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, if you get a random group of people and maybe get one of the quiet ones, you know, get the ones who want to speak and then pick up one of the quiet ones, you'll get a sense of what's happening in the whole. And just to point this out, this may be this is a good example of how the online space is different than your teaching space when you're with people, because you have a sense of like when they're foggy, you can tell that they're not connected, or by really seeing, feeling their posture, etc. You can get some of that by looking, but because you need something more in order to find out where they're at, you need to build in the discussion, which you might not have had in the classroom as you would have been working with it in the classroom. And that's why you need to redo how you do your lessons, so that there's time for that kind of interaction, so that you can get what you need to know about your students.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's also one other element, Mahima, that relates to the third factor that I was mentioning before. Because if you succeed, that people don't come just from the individual place, but that there's a third factor established between all of us. This third factor itself becomes a unifying strength, a unifying power. Because as this factor is established in the room, it has some magnetism to it. And people can relate to it. So you can work with the group also through this third factor, because we all as individuals can connect to it. It has a unifying power that allows to hold the diversity that we are in a way that not every single diverse point has to be part of the conversation, but is held in this unifying factor of this third space that I pointed out. So to be aware that there's something in the conversation that is beyond our individuality, that we are co-creating, weaving together, allows to create this coherence and also to bring people in to the degree that they are aware that this exists.
I'd like to hear more from the groups, from your experience of the groups before the break.
And again, you just can come in, or you can raise your hand. You would like to go both ways.
Our group, there's something really amazing that happened for me, was that we went down this kind of a thread, which we almost passed from one to another, of realizing, in a sense, our shared physicality, so that we're all sitting on the same earth, we're all breathing the same air, even though it's in different places. And you know, and actually we invited each other to close our eyes. And I was really struck by almost a shared physical intimacy that suddenly sprung up and didn't, you know, and wasn't kind of, wasn't a trick or a technique, but it really kind of felt like we were living in the same moment in time, however many thousands of miles apart from each other. And I found that very, very intense and compelling.
Mm. That's the we. Yeah. Or that's one way of experiencing the we.
That's the we. And Attila, what you're pointing out is also one specific quality of Zoom meeting that we all have to discover right now, because it is such a new human experience. The simple fact, and I'm always struck by it, and it seems you're referring to the same experience, that we meet around the globe. And somehow the physicality of the globe and the earth becomes a tangible experience. Because you are sitting in London, Mahima is sitting in India, we are sitting in Germany, people are here from Scotland, people are here from Vietnam, people are here from the US. Just this simple reality creates a physical reality of a globe that we are holding in our consciousness. No on-site meeting can do this, because if you have on-site meetings, we're always in one spot. And the consciousness that is unfolding, which has its power, is on one spot. But this is a distributed consciousness. So there's I would say, a new, very intimate global consciousness arising between us. That's not theoretical. It's not, oh yes, we know, but we experience our globality in a physical sense. And I think we are just in the beginning of really experimenting what this is and how this changes our human experience. And just to see this is also part of the power of Zoom meetings that we did not have before.
Mm. Yeah, and actually to add to that, that's part of our work, actually, is to help cultivate this consciousness of our global interconnection, or our simultaneous connection across the globe. Because the more we bring our attention to the fact that under our feet is the same earth, and recognize that we're actually in different places, as you were saying, Thomas, there's a different sensing that arises of the wholeness of this enormous globe. You can't grab it, you can't like pin it down, but it becomes a part of one's context of living. And you can imagine if a significant portion of human beings had that awareness of our simultaneous togetherness, the fact that we are connected on this one earth, something would be very different.
And also connected to that, one other part that is directly related to this are Zoom meetings, because of their so often global nature, are more and more, because it's so easy to meet beyond a specific place, are in themselves a teaching place for diversity. if we allow that to be. And we have to be very respectful for that, and we also have to be humble, just to realize we don't know yet really how to do this, but to be aware that we have certain ways how to do things in Central Europe. We have a certain way how to do things in the US. We have a certain way how to do things in the UK. But we have certain way how to do things in Ho Chi Minh City. And we have certain ways how to do things in Singapore. And here we are, and we meet together, and we have to find ways to create mutual understanding and mutual respect. And not on a theoretical level, but on a one-to-one and on a whole level. So this is an experimental situation that we are in that allows us, but also forces us to really deal in a new way with the diversity of our human experience.
Sally, if you'd like to speak, go ahead.
Yes, I've really been sitting with something since the last group, as it were, which is really that in order for me to feel part of the we, I really need to feel that something has been revealed in a personal way by someone, so that I can then connect and allow myself to open. And I'm starting to find myself going quite heady with consciousness and being aware that we are on earth, and actually we have to be human to human, and then we can create more, I feel, what you're speaking so eloquently about. And I don't know if that makes sense to you or anyone else, but I have to feel that I can share something with myself and then feel that that's met. Sorry if I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but I always find in groups it does take me a while to settle, and one of the things that really helps me is when the facilitator reveals something a bit personal about themselves, or just something that's their character, and then it allows something else to open. And I don't know quite what that is, but it's you know, I suppose it's being able to be fully real and just, you know, be yourself. Sorry, I'm aware that it's really silent, so I'm thinking no one really gets what I'm saying, but it feels to me quite important.
No,
Can I jump in?
I get what you're saying.
And in fact, sorry, Leela, you talked about, you know, the group you share, how you are at the beginning and the end. And for me, I need to do that. I can't just be invited to breathe together, or, you know, I need to share myself first, and then I'm open to the we. And then I feel like, oh my God, I'm so in my ego. That's not actually helpful. But actually, we are still our own individual selves, and everyone will arrive differently. So you have to be very sensitive to that in order to bring that through, so then you can create the bigger circle, or be so conscious of that. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And I'm aware that that works differently for everyone. You know, so everyone has to have time to arrive. I'm also aware very much of how I did a transpersonal training. So I always think about the elements, the earth, the air, the fire, the water, and how we need all of that. And we can get too stuck in earth or water, and where's the vibrancy? So, and to me, that's also about, you know, humor and just showing yourself. And I know that I need to see that before I can feel, sorry, I feel I'm going off something slightly different, but I feel that needs to be created almost first before the consciousness can really be felt by a group as a whole. I suppose that's what I'm saying, but I'm obviously speaking for me, and I'm aware that, you know, everyone will have completely different perspectives on this.
What you're saying is definitely true for many people, and it also depends very much on the context of the group that you try to create.
Yes.
if you want to create a business meeting, it's maybe not the thing you want to go into. And if you want to create a meeting of where cultures want to meet, it's probably not the context where you mostly want to go into. So I very much agree that this has to be part of your consideration. And at the same time, there is also a challenge in these meetings that we meet in a place that's far beyond our personal usual context. And relating to the different contexts, and we have the context right now to really investigate together what is the specifics of meeting online in all different contexts. We have to find the right way to integrate both sides. Because I very much agree with you, all of us have to show up for real and have to be vulnerable and visible to each other. Of course, that means different things in different contexts, but to find the right way how to do this is again the art to see the particular kind of the meeting that we are having and the different way how we can connect this.
Yes. Thank you.
I think, Leela, you're dying to say something, so go ahead.
I am dying to say something to Sally. Is what I'm hearing, Sally, and I may be wrong. I think when I initially joined this group, I was struck with people's awareness of themselves, their physical awareness, but I was also, to use the term, struck by seeing so many empaths, so many highly empathic people in a group like this. And I want to take a guess that there's also the risk, because it's a shared consciousness space, to get almost lost in the we and lose the sense of I. And so what I hear you saying doesn't sound egoistic to me at all. It sounds like just that awareness of that you still want to feel grounded. And so I just wanted to share with you, I read a little tip from someone who specifically works with empowering highly empathic people, highly sensitive people, is that when you're dealing in an online environment, wiggle your toes, because it just brings a grounding back, and it will prevent you from, as you said, going absolutely just into that shared consciousness. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you. And I've just been doing that, and I feel better. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I also wanted to say what's interesting too is in this space, our presence shows up. Our presence, our being shows up whether or not we're aware of it. So it's like you are open to the space, even if you don't feel that you've entered it yet. And that's part of I think the trickiness of this online space, is that you are here in consciousness. It's not some extra thing. You are already here in consciousness, in your embodied consciousness presence as who you are here in this space. And even if you haven't chosen to speak and enter it that way, you are also here. And there, because the medium that we're really working with is our consciousness, it is there whether we, in a certain way, whether we like it or not. And then how do you manage transitions so that people can enter more fully with their own experience, themselves, etc. And that is how, depends on your context and what it is that you want to make happen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. And maybe also to add something to what Leela, you said about getting lost in the we. And this goes maybe a little off track of the specific question of online aliveness, but it is very much what we are working when we are working these spaces. To be highly aware that there are different V spaces. And one differentiation that we do make is we talk about pre-individuated V spaces and trans-individuated V spaces. What you mean is a V space where we are aware of this V factor, but we are aware also of our individuality. And these trans-individual V spaces are completely different because they are dependent on me being fully me and being fully here. It's not a group, in kind of a group think or in a tribal way, which is also beautiful, but it's you lose your individuality in that. But the space of a trans-individual V space has the quality that it's based on our authentic individual being here. And in this here, me, Thomas, you, Lila, here in Frankfurt, you in South Africa, we are here in this very particular way we are, and we are together holding a space. That's a V space. Both is true at the same time. And we have to find a way that works with both parts of the reality and honors both parts of the reality. It's going a little too far for the context that we try to share here, but in itself, it's a very important distinction, because otherwise we sidestep something. We sidestep the dignity of our individuality. And also only this way we can bring in the diversity that we want to honor in any kind of way space. So also thank you for bringing that in.
Thank you.
May I share an experience I had in the last breakout group, because I think it's connected what you said. So someone said, I'm more connected with open eyes, and we, for a period of 1 or 2 minutes, we closed the eyes, and she said she's not so strong connected. And then fear comes up in myself because I have the opposite. It's the opposite impression. So I'm connected in the same way if the eyes are closed or not. And to speak that out, we learned in the group what I think, that such a lot of different excesses in the world to come in this V. And it's, for me, it was again a very important experience to see it and to live it, to have it alive, not only in my mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Manfred. And I would like to highlight a third factor in this from your experience, because part of the V experience is that you are exposed to each other's different access to the V. So you are also exposed to the diversity of experience, and to allow this diversity of the experience to be part of the shared space, to weave this together, is the creative power of this dialogical space. Because only because we are exposed to each other, I also see, wait a moment, your access point seems to be different than mine. And what, as you described, first is also kind of, oh, wait a moment, who is right? Are you right? Am I right? But if I go beyond this, it's just very interesting. It's a starting point of a creative process that only can happen in the we. Only hearing you, Manfred, you seem to have a very specific access point that's different to mine. Let's find out together how this comes together. How is mutual understanding created in this? That's the creative factor in these we spaces, where our diversity unifies in the dialogical sphere, and something different maybe comes out that I haven't thought about and you haven't thought about, and that's the creative reality of these we spaces. That's part of the power of it.
And that's driven by curiosity. That you mentioned interest, but being curious in this space, being curious. I mean, it's something that we need to bring into all of our group interactions. That being curious as opposed to trying to figure out who's right or wrong. Being curious about where the connection points are, what the differences are. that it's a very important attitude in engaging in a space to create coherence. Because with an attitude of curiosity, you're inviting different perspectives in and allowing them to be what they are, which is the only way that we can then actually be together in the space.
But that is again, it's a concept or non-concept of not knowing, because I think I know, and the moment I think I know, I'm separate.
Yes.
It's, sorry.
Yeah. And one of the main ways that we think that we know is we think we know what is right or wrong, or we want to know what is right or wrong, instead of just not knowing and being curious and wanting to find out, like, wow, what's this about?
Because just imagine for all of us, the unbelievable richness of this space that we're in, with all these different perspectives that we bring to this, and the different ways how to go about this diversity. One is basically to find a way who is right and who is wrong in this. And the other is to find ways for mutual understanding, where I hear you and the friction point where I don't understand you triggers my curiosity, so that we can learn together that maybe, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen, it happens quite often, there is a higher understanding that includes my perspective and your perspective. So to just see this unbelievable creative power of also these Zoom meetings, where you just put together in groups with people, and you have these different backgrounds, and there's a certain setting and there's certain perspectives, and with this not knowing that you're talking about, Manfred, and the curiosity, and just holding the wholeness and the diversity of the situation at the same time, a very creative process opens up. That's what we find is the power of we.
Could I share something?
Go ahead.
So thank you for everyone for what you're sharing. I'm getting more of an understanding of perhaps what online aliveness might be for me, is something about a participation in a shared space, and or endeavor or aim or idea or value, because I've noticed how sometimes when I'm not participating in terms of speaking, it's quite easy for me to sit back and be an observer and get distracted with other things that are in here, like in this personal space. And it takes some effort sometimes. There's sort of a zoning out that I notice can happen. And it takes some effort to come back. And it feels more alive when I'm back. And so I've noticed that in the smaller groups, when it's much easier to be involved, to participate. And like right now, it feels very alive for me. And that's a shifting experience. And that the participation isn't necessarily into something where it's all the same, but there's something that's shared. And I guess there's many ways in which that sharedness, if you like, could be articulated or pointed out. Someone in our group used a nice word to use, pointing, like the words point at something. So what are we pointing at? It feels like sometimes you're pointing at this almost transpersonal, almost consciousness. It feels like some spiritual element to it perhaps, but then occasionally you point to the fact that in certain contexts you might need a more practical focus in a business setting. So what would bring people together? What's the shared endeavor in that space? So how the words that you use or how you bring yourself into the space participates for this shared endeavor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
What you are highlighting, Jim, is also a certain skill that needs to be cultivated here. It's a sense for what is appropriate. Because when we come together, the aliveness comes from the moment where there is a meeting point in something. And to develop this meeting point in something, we have to have a shared context that we want to meet in. If someone wants to have a therapeutic meeting and the other wants to have a spiritual meeting and the third one wants to have a business meeting, it will be difficult to have a conversation. So we have to have a shared agreement of what is the context that we are meeting in and what is the appropriate language to use this. And there is a dance to find the relevant context and the relevant participation in this context. But as soon as there is a shared understanding of this, there is this creative process opening up that pulls one in, that triggers the aliveness that you are just pointing out, where I don't check out, where my interest is caught. Because all of a sudden, out of some reason, I probably don't know why, I'm interested. And to develop this is very much coming from the capacity to have an intuitive understanding or even explicit understanding of the context that we want to develop together, and my understanding of what my appropriate contribution to this can be. And if we weave this together, the context can evolve. That's part of how this really becomes a very fruitful, very rich and fruitful conversation.
I'd also like to point to the thing that you said about something that we share rather than being the same. Because when we talk about coherence, we're not talking about sameness. We're talking about how to create, in different contexts, ways that we can share even our different opinions about something, or different ways that we can share something together. Because that's what will pull out the potential of this kind of space, is creating that ground of coherence that is an invitation for everyone to share in something, and that in something will be what you create as a facilitator in order to make the things that you're doing happen. Right, and we are now over time.
Yeah. So we would like to come to closure here for today. Thank you very much for your time, and we would like to do it again in the same way we did it the other days. So we will leave this room open. You're very welcome to stay here. We will open also the breakout rooms, the last breakout room. So you're very welcome to go back to your breakout rooms and look if someone of your companions is showing up there. And if others are showing up, to just hang out in your breakout group. And you also can go back and forth between the breakout room and the big room. And of course, if you have to leave or if you want to leave,
have a great day.
Have a great day.
Or evening, or whatever time it is. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your intention to be here. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
The beautiful quilt of your faces.
Peter, I was wondering about this question that you posed on the breakout rooms. And I'm sorry for the background noise. This is the gardening.
It's gorgeous.
Can you make it a bit more clear?
You mean about interrupting people?
No, about the breakout rooms. You in the chat you wrote something about the